Thank you, Chris and Lisa, our choral scholars and our choir members, for putting together this beautiful service, for sharing in song and in scripture. And the scriptures that we've been reading today and will continue to read, they come together and they tell a story of how God has been active and moving in the history of humankind, in particular in the history of Israel through many centuries, leading to one ordinary event in a small town of Bethlehem, a story that describes the birth of a child whose very ordinary birth will lead to an extraordinary life. As the Spirit of God weaves through the lives of each person involved, there are choices to be made. There are reactions and responses to the events of life, of fear or faith, of suspicion or wisdom. Mary, shocked and humbled by the enunciation of her place in God's plan, chooses faith, trusting that something good will come through this present dilemma. Joseph, filled with suspicion and fear and anger, listens for the direction in a dream and steps out with courage, caring for this wife and child in a world filled with so much danger and yet so many possibilities. The story that we read is bigger than this one small family that is being formed in this moment. Next, we travel with astrologers from foreign lands following an unexpected star. The wise men follow this star to the most logical place to find the birth of a king, a palace. For surely if Israel was going to have a king, well, it would be born in a royal family. But they come and find something different. They leave with a sense of awe. The skies were telling of something even greater. For a child born in poverty and obscurity was going to change the meaning of power forever. A child that would grow up and speak for the God who proclaims, "In my kingdom, the greatest will be the least, the leader will be a servant." A child that would grow up not to lead armies in battle, conquering enemies, but instead would pray for his enemies and would die at their hands, offering forgiveness just as they took his life. A child that would grow up to show the world that holiness does not lie in being separated from the struggles of life, but true holiness, seen in loving and forgiving and loving even more, and rejoicing with those who rejoice and mourning with those who mourn. So these wise travelers have a choice to make too. And they choose faith over fear, and they choose to rejoice, and they listen for the movement of the one true God whose Spirit is active in all of creation. And they enter this small house and they find a child with Mary. Somehow they know they are on holy ground. And they open their bags that they have carried so far, and they offer gifts that will carry this child to safety. So many choices written into this one story, and we have choices too. Choices to respond to each new event in our lives out of fear or suspicion, to surrender to the frustration and the fatigue, or to choose joy. Joy in these uncontrollable changes taking place in our lives. Now, Kate Bowler has been living with a rare form of cancer for many years, and it seems she might be just the kind of spiritual advisor we could use right now. She reminds us that joy is like oxygen. She shares that in speaking with Gary Hagen, a founder of an organization that rescues people from modern-day slavery year after year. She asked him how he keeps from burning out through all these years of what feels like overwhelming and what could be depressing work. And his answer was joy. He said, joy is the oxygen for doing the hard work. It creates a kind of alchemy where hard things become not only possible, but sustainable whenever he finds those opportunities for joy. This year, this is a word we need to hear. Is there something that brings you joy? Is there something that seems to make you forget yourself even as you become more and more alive in it? Joy is the oxygen that makes it possible to keep going. So this year and this time, if you can find your source of joy, this is the thing that you are fortified by. You are a being that was meant and made to metabolize joy. In this year that feels like one long, unsolvable dilemma, we need to embrace those moments of joy and make time for and savor for whatever bits of joy we can find. Each person in this Christmas story that we are reading together, that we share, made choices in the face of their fears for the sake of joy. Choices that together are woven into the story of God's love for the world. And each person here today is a part of that whole fabric of life, and each choice that we make is taken into the creativity of God, bringing into being this kingdom of peace and love and joy. So now, if there is joy in your life, may it be small or large, find it and hold it and savor it. Let it give you strength. Let it give you oxygen to keep on doing the work that you have been called to do. This story that we are reading is the story that we live in. It is the story that gives meaning to our life. So let's continue to share this story in Scripture and then in song.